Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Kasman. I'm with Protect Ukraine Now, and today we're going to talk about military aid to Ukraine, supplemental bill, and why Ukraine is important to us Americans here, and perhaps many other countries in the world, not just Ukraine and Ukrainians. And my guest here today is Alexander. Hi, Alexander.
Hello, thank you. I'm an advocate for Ukraine, and I'm here to help educate and to learn more myself. So thank you for having me.
Of course. So the situation today is described as stalemate. That's not a speculation of any sort. That's been talked about in major publications. Ukraine's chief general Zaluzhny mentioned that as well in one of his articles that were recently published.
The Economist.
Right, so that was in The Economist, that's correct. And it's certainly important to look at why the situation looks the way it is right now. For that,
Well, I also wanted to say that the stalemate is, to put into context, because they don't have adequate military capability. So in a way, it's an opportunity for the US to be able to fill that need and give them the military capability in order to gain the advantage over Russia, because both of them, is my understanding, Russia and Ukraine both are at a stalemate and struggling to make significant advantages against each other. Is that correct?
this is absolutely true. And both sides are trying to gain that advantage over the other. Russia is spending heavily on the military, and Ukraine must do so as well. So let's look at military aid that U.S. has delivered to Ukraine so far. And as long as we're looking at military aid, it's worth mentioning that the United States is the main is a main donor of military equipment to Ukraine. So there are obviously other military gear going to Ukraine from our friends and allies in Europe. However, most of it comes from the United States. So another important thing, let's thank every American for this military assistance, not just military assistance, humanitarian aid. All of this is very important to Ukraine's survival. That's why Ukraine is still going. And we are thankful to everyone because everyone's taxpayers' dollars went into this aid. So regardless of how you feel about helping Ukraine, thank you. And we're going to cover just the military portion of the aid today. And this number over here is listed as $46 billion on our website. But this is not, this is only the money that has been allocated. A lot of it is still pending contracts. A lot of it is still future deliveries. And we're going to only focus on what today has been delivered to Ukraine. So over here, we have equipment worth $19 billion that was delivered to Ukraine under PDA program. PDA stands for Presidential Drawdown Authority. That's a program that allows the president to take items that are currently on the inventory and transfer those assets to, in this case, Ukraine. There are also some items that were transferred to Ukraine under USAI program. We currently estimate between $3 and $4 billion worth of those assets that were already delivered to Ukraine. The rest are contracts that's still been fulfilled. So in total, Ukraine has received roughly $23 billion worth of military assistance.
Okay, and also I just wanted to say the USAI and FMF, that's all congressionally appointed, appropriated funds, yeah?
That's correct. So
Okay,
all of these funds and the section of the graph over here is listing those supplemental bills and the dates when they were appropriated. There are 4 major supplemental bills that were created in order to address the war in Europe. So not all of it is for Ukraine, but all of it is sort of on the umbrella of Ukraine. So this number here, almost $114 billion, is usually associated with aid to Ukraine.
yes, and that's a really good point. So it's associated with aid to Ukraine, but not all of it was appropriate just for Ukraine, for other countries in Europe too. But also not all of that was sent either. So there's a difference between appropriations and actual being delivered. And you're saying that only, what was it, $23 billion has gone directly to military in this war, and that's it?
That's correct. That's the equipment that has crossed the border with Ukraine and is being actively used over there right now. And we're talking about the aid since the beginning of the war. So we're getting close to 2 years since the full-scale invasion. And those $23 billion, they cover all of that period of time.
Okay, and now that we know that Ukraine's in a stalemate and only $23 billion have gone to military, which is just such a small fraction of the categories that are being funded besides humanitarian and financial aid, one would think that more would go to the military. And so I think that what we're getting at is not enough aid has gone to military in order for Ukraine to break through this stalemate that it's in today.
That's correct. And let's compare this amount of money to, for example, what Russia is spending today on the assault. So it is very hard to know exactly how much money is spent by Russia. They obviously don't report it openly. At some point, Forbes estimated about $10 billion a month, every month. So that's the money that being spent on the war in Ukraine, and it is estimated at the moment that Russia is going to be spending over $100 billion next year on consumables, so artillery shells, rounds, fuel, anything else that is not military gear but a consumable, and probably around 80 billion on the rest, meaning salaries and other needs of this assault. To compare the aid Ukraine has received so far, let's mention Poland. So Poland is not in war of any sort, fortunately for them. However, they take this very seriously. They understand that they could be next, and they have committed 3% of their GDP to military needs of the country. That's roughly $14 billion every year. And they recently have upgraded their military. This year alone, they have purchased tanks and howitzers from South Korea. They purchased Abrams tanks from the United States. they spent about $12 billion on Apache attack helicopters. They bought 96 of them, making Poland the second largest Apache helicopter consumer next to the United
Wow,
States. So United States
that's
is the
amazing.
only country that would have more Apache helicopters than Poland. They also spent $10 billion on HIMARSes. That is a very familiar name to those who follow the war in Ukraine. Those are the rocket launchers that made a lot of difference. Of course, they'll be getting those ATACMS, long-range artillery missiles that were still denied to Ukraine. US has so far declined giving Ukraine those long-range munitions. Poland will be getting those. And finally, they've spent about $14 billion on various tanks from South Korea. So total, Poland spent just this year alone $36 billion. Those are big ticket items that we know about. Of course, they're spending more money that may not necessarily reported in the news. So $36 billion just this year alone. A country that is not in war, they just concerned about a possibility of Russia attacking them too. They have spent that much money making sure they are protected in case that happens. And that again, $36 billion Poland spent on their military compared to $23 billion that Ukraine has received in military aid from the United States of America.
Okay, so that's a very disproportionate ratio of GDP to bulk weapons sent to Ukraine compared between Poland and the US. Okay, and it just doesn't seem, it seems really out of place that Poland is getting long range weapons and they're not even in an active war, but Ukraine is not even getting these long range weapons to shoot deep into the Russian occupied territory to target Russian military targets. It seems very out of place, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and that's been mostly justified by a concern for escalation of this conflict. Unfortunately, the escalation usually works the other way. If you have a bully that you don't stop in time, the situation gets worse and worse. Anyone who had that experience in high school, they know if when you're getting bullied, you need to stop that right away before situation gets out of control.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't just let a burglar, murderer, rapist into your house and then do whatever they want to you and your family and just say, well, we're not going to escalate it because we don't want to make it worse. I mean,
Right.
that just doesn't make sense naturally.
We're also sending a very wrong message to Russia. This is a total non-commitment. We are very hesitant to provide Ukraine what they need to win this war. In the same time, we judge Ukraine based on the progress they have made so far. In reality, we should be judging our ability to provide Ukraine with critical munitions. Ukraine is doing an outstanding job. Their military is highly motivated, and they highly experienced compared to any other Western army. Of course, there are other experienced troops, but considering that Ukraine is in this horrible war for almost 2 years, they have a lot of knowledge right there. And they do need equipment. They do need a technical ability to resist the aggressor.
Right. And we have the equipment to be able to give them, right? And like we have the long range weapons and the fighter jets. It's just a matter of us actually giving it to them to be able to gain operational advantage.
Absolutely. And a lot of equipment that we can and should give to Ukraine is not something we need ourselves. A lot of that gear is older generation. It is kept in the United States in some storage facilities.
Collecting dust.
They collect dust. We pay for that storage. Eventually, we're going to be paying for destruction of those unnecessary munitions, which is also a cost to taxpayers over here. Instead, we can just give it to Ukraine, and they can help us take care of Russia, who is one of their adversaries that we here have to worry about as well. As long as we're talking about numbers, $23 billion that Ukraine has received so far is less than 3% of Department of Defense spend annually. So here in the United States, we spend north of $800 billion every year. And the reason we justify that sort of expense is because we share this planet with countries like Russia, like China, like North Korea. They are the reason we have to go through these expenses.
Right.
Makes
And Russia right
sense.
now, it makes sense. I mean, Russia right now is one of our top two defense threats, and they're tied down in Ukraine right now. So it makes sense that the Ukrainian fight is kind of like an offset for our military budget. And Ukraine's been able to make it this far into, unfortunately, a stalemate right now. And Russia clearly has been far outspending Ukraine. So going forward, what do we need to do in order to regain that operational advantage and move out of stalemate status?
Yes, so at the moment, and this video is being recorded on December 3rd, next week, the Congress is going to vote for supplemental bill for Ukraine. And where we can make a lot of difference is calling our senators and our representatives, specifically those ladies and gentlemen on appropriations committees. Those committees decide what goes into that supplemental bill. They decide what's important for Ukraine to get right now, and we need to ask them to prioritize military assistance over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Right, because we've spent least on military, and military is what's going to end the war.
Of course. We also know that Europe is outspending us by far on the humanitarian assistance, and we should be fine letting them take care of the humanitarian aspect and do what only we can do, that is provide the military aid Ukraine needs to win the war right now. So we need to prioritize on military aid. We need to front load that military aid, meaning Ukraine should receive that assistance as soon as that munitions is ready to ship. Now, we also want to provide Ukraine with advanced capabilities. Some of the equipment that we're delivering today is insufficient. For example, the F-16s fighter jets that Europe is going to provide soon, hopefully, unless there are more delays. But those fighter jets, they're great for helping with air defense. They will not be able to do much on the front line because Russian jets are more advanced, and those F-16s they will be shut down if they approach Russian forces near the front line. So we need.
So what else do we need then to compensate to meet that air superiority if F-16s won't do it?
So first, F-16s can be upgraded. Not every F-16 is the same, and there are certain packages that can be, they're called blocks in aviation terms. There are certain upgrades that can be done to that equipment. We also have additional F-16s here in the United States that we can provide to Ukraine, and again, they can be and should be upgraded with more advanced capabilities.
Mhm.
We also help our allies in Europe all the time, and there are certain equipment we already sent to our allies in Europe or other countries. They are already approved for export, and we should be helping Ukraine, giving them same capabilities we give to other countries that we'd like to assist militarily.
Absolutely, because we need to stop Russia and Ukraine first before they get to the rest of Europe. So F-16s, yes, we want those, but we need to make sure that we're also upgrading them in going beyond the capability of what an F-16 does.
Yes. And finally, we're asking Congress to make those line items prescriptive, leaving out any ambiguity around this topic. We would like this to be used by the administration the way it has been prescribed by the Congress, leaving no chance that there will be any delays or other
Loopholes, confusion. We need this, what we're saying. Front load,
Absolutely.
short-term assistance.
Yeah, and it is important to stress out that this is very urgent. Ukraine cannot fight forever, unlike Russia. And really, the way Russia has positioned themselves, they are able to almost like in a computer game, start over again and again. They don't care much about how many of their own people are going to die in this war, and they can always go back. There's no
Mobilize, just send more
the
men to
war
war.
the war is not happening on their territory. Therefore, they have an opportunity to mobilize more people, accumulate more weapons, and try again. So Ukraine needs protection today. Ukraine needs that military assistance before Ukraine runs out of men and women in uniform that protect their homeland, and they stand really between Putin and other countries. For those of us who are concerned about Russia falling apart as a result of Ukraine reclaiming the territory, they should consider the outcome if NATO falls apart, and if we don't stand by Ukraine, then before we know it, we may have to consider whether or not we should be defending Estonia or Latvia or any other country in Europe. And if we fail to do that as well, then the NATO is effectively gone at that point.
Absolutely. We need NATO credibility, and we need to protect long-term security in Europe, and that means helping Ukraine win.
Right. So we're going to include a couple of links in the description to this video, and we're asking you to call your Congresspeople, explain to them the importance of assisting Ukraine, and deliver the document with the detailed asks that we just covered to their offices. You can email it to legislative assistants. They're great people. They're very friendly, and they'll be able to pass that document down to the congressperson that they work for.
Okay, sounds good. And so just to recap, the document is maximize PDA, USI, and any short-term defense systems, because Ukraine needs to defend itself now, and front load all bulk weapons that are available to be sent, make Ukraine have the military capabilities that is in line or comparable with NATO allies, and make sure that this is prescriptive and there's no ambiguity. This is what needs to happen.
Absolutely. You got it. Hopefully everyone else got it too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate your support for Ukraine.
Thank you. And thank you, Alec.
Thank you, Alex.